Well, one of the problems is clickbait is, oh, we need to get eyeballs on the stories, eyeballs on the stories. The other thing is we need to get it first. No, you don't need to get it first. You need to get it right. So hurrying up to get
Ooh.
it, when you hurry that much to beat somebody else by, 45 seconds, 3 minutes, you're gonna make mistakes. I'd rather be second and be right, or be third or fourth or fifth and be right.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to all my homies and haters. Another episode of the Executive's Playbook. So today's guest is a very good friend of mine, Joshua L Weinstein. He is a phenomenal human being, but he is a communication strategist, a writer, an editor, with over 20 plus years of experience in journalism, in entertainment, and startups. He's a former newspaper reporter for the Portland Press Herald and the St. Petersburg Times down in Florida. He covered politics, culture, breaking news. He is a current contributor to Variety and The Wrap. He's the co-founder of ScreenBid, which was an awesome company that basically auctioned off props from television shows and movies. His first auction did over $1 million. He was the former head of business development and communications at Playtime Entertainment. He is also the creator, the writer, and the voice actor for a scripted comedy podcast called Mental Radio that has over 250,000 downloads. The link will be below the video. But he's also a consultant. He's helped executives and organizations craft strategies, speeches, various crisis communications, internet messaging, all the way around. He's basically known for turning information into powerful stories, and he would be the first to tell you that. But he's a wonderful human being. I've known him a long time, and I asked him a lot of tremendous questions. So let's get right into it. Well, first and foremost, how are you, Josh?
I'm doing great.
That's
Doing
awesome.
great.
It's been a minute since I've gotten to see you or, like be able to sit down and have a coffee, which we
Well,
need to.
welcome to my happy home.
Yeah, that's not. Are you in Cali?
Yeah.
Oh, you are? Wow, that's like nice. That's a nice little spot.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. I'm glad you're still out here because, oh yeah, you have the main mug. That's awesome. I have one of Becky's Diner over
There
on
you
my
go.
counter over there. Yeah. I'm a mug collector. Are you a mug collector?
Yes.
Really?
Everywhere I go, I get a mug. I don't get baseball caps anymore because I have too many. And the mugs remind me of where I was. I was just in Romania, uh, and I have Bucharest mugs now.
That's incredible. That's the exact same thing with me. Like when I went to France, I got one in Cannes and I got one in Paris, and it's like they're like memories. So I have I look at my counter and I have like a whole area dedicated to all my mugs hanging, and
Yeah.
they all have a story behind them. You know what I mean?
And every time you drink out of them, you remember something from that trip.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. That's amazing, man. That you're a mug collector. I did not know that about you. That's really cool. So, first and foremost, I want to give you a little bit of a background of why I'm doing this.
Okay.
Basically, I've always wanted to do a podcast. I've had a lot of people telling me that I should for a long time, and I started to do one, and it was a political one, and I found out very quickly that I don't really want to do that, and not because I don't have a lot to say on the subject, but because the news was so negative every day and so just like draining, and having to talk about these things as like something to do every day was not fun. And to be honest, I have a company that I do for a living. I don't do this for a living. I do this for fun. And I didn't want to
You don't want to be miserable for fun?
Yeah, I didn't want to be miserable for fun. And like the comments and the negativity and the threats, and then people that just go out of their way to try to make your day hell because they disagree with you. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like, no, I don't want to do this. So I thought about it long and hard, and I was thinking, one of my favorite quotes is, if I've seen further, it was from Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. And I've always felt like I was fortunate to meet some of the best people from all my travels and all the places I've been. And I was like, it would really just be super fun to have a podcast where it's not about me at all, but it's about them. And so that's why I started the Executives Playbook, and that's what this is about. And you're just one of those awesome people that I was fortunate to know in my life, and I know you're going to have some awesome insight for people to like listen to and
I
enjoy.
hope so.
I think you will. I think you will, because you're a very well traveled individual with a very like long resume of a lot of interesting stuff.
I've been some places and I met some people and I've done some things.
Yeah. So it has come to my attention. I did a lot of research before this meeting on you, like looking up a lot of stuff about you, and I was overwhelmed with a whole bunch of information that, as long as I've known you, I did not know about you. You know what I mean? Like the whole thing that you did with wardrobe stuff.
Yeah, yeah, with ScreenBid, which was sold to a company called Heritage Auctions. It was a an online auction house that sells props, set deck, and wardrobe items from TV shows and movies. Our first auction was for Breaking Bad, so I spent hours and hours and hours in the warehouse picking through Breaking Bad stuff.
That's
Um,
that's really interesting. Yeah, it was something like in the auction, it was like up over $1 million or something.
yeah, yeah. I mean, in Breaking Bad, there's a book, a Leaves of Grass book. We sold that for $65,000.
Wow. Wow, that's so crazy. Just from doing that, because that is kind of like a really entrepreneurial endeavor. Like was there anything that you learned from doing that whole thing that you
I
felt
learned a
like,
lot about it wasn't my idea. There's a great producer by the name of Bill Block. And Bill and a friend of his, Bill got in touch with a friend of his and me, and they said, let's do this thing. And I thought it was a great idea. Bill had produced a movie called District 9, and suddenly he saw some District 9 stuff being sold online. And he's like, what the hell? That's my stuff. And then he saw that people buy this, and he decided, okay, let's make this a thing. And really, I learned a lot about the auction business uh, and about collectors. The auction business is fascinating because when you buy something, you don't say you bought it, you say you won. I won the auction. Um,
what?
and there's some interesting psychology in it in terms of once somebody bids on something, they are willing to spend that amount of money and they'll keep on bidding. It's a fascinating thing. Also, I learned that when it comes to items like we sold, especially wardrobe items, if the item was worn by a good guy, they didn't want it to be cleaned. But if it was worn by a bad guy, they wanted it laundered.
No way. Wow. I wonder what's up with that. Like there must be some sort of deep like psychological reason for that or something. Like there's got to be. So that's really I so they must have felt like there was some sort of negative energy with it or
I
something.
guess so. Or they just were creeped out. I don't know.
That's so crazy. That's wild. Another thing that you did was you started out as a reporter at the St. Petersburg Times, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like what did like working in newspapers, because I know that you became later on in life a storyteller.
Yeah.
Like do you feel like working in newspapers and like working in that arena as doing journalism taught you anything or gave you sort of any insight into storytelling that you picked up from it? Like do you feel like that storytelling kind of, like your gift of it like was aided by your experience as a journalist?
Everything. I actually started at my college newspaper. I went to the University of Florida, and there's a newspaper there called the Independent Florida Alligator, which is, as the name implies, it's an independent newspaper. Doesn't get any money from the university, doesn't get an office from the university, completely off campus because of something that happened in 1973. So I worked there. I I went to the University of Florida to be a journalism major. Um, the dean of journalism, a guy named Ralph Lowenstein, recruited me there. And as a freshman, I took the first journalism class with a wonderful professor by the name of Jean Chance, whom I'm still in touch with. She's fantastic. And there, I went to college when I was 17 years old. And so I'm in that class, and here's Professor Chance. And she says, if you guys are serious, you'll go to the Alligator and you'll sign up to write for them. And I was 17. I didn't know anything. And the professor said to do it. So I did it. And I ended up writing for them. And ultimately, I was the editor of the Alligator, which was to this day the greatest job I've ever had.
Wow.
Um, and then the St. Petersburg Times, which is now called the Tampa Bay Times, it's the largest daily newspaper in Florida, which now isn't quite as big as it used to be, but it used to be giant. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of subscribers. So Andy Barnes, who was the editor of the St. Petersburg Times, hired me there. He met me at the University of Florida once, and we got talking, and I didn't know who he was. And a few days later, Professor Chance, in fact, called me in, and she said, "Hey, if I were you, I'd call Andy Barnes." I'm like, "Okay, why?" She said, "He's the editor and president of the St. Petersburg Times." So I called him and he hired me. Um,
Wow.
and that's the St. Pete Times was a great newspaper, Pulitzer Prize winning. It's owned by a 501c3. And it was a wonderful place to learn and to write and just to be. And newspapers, you're surrounded by these dedicated, creative, diligent, crazy people on deadline, and you have to write fast, and you don't have a lot of time to argue. Your editor does something, and generally they do pretty good things, but sometimes. I remember when I was at the Press Herald in Maine, my editor had done something just unfathomably stupid, and I went to him and I said, "Joe, did you put your lips to the terminal and suck the soul out of the story?" And luckily, he had a good sense of humor about it. But yeah, ultimately, you can argue a little bit, but it's a daily newspaper. It's due. It's in the front yard the next day, and so you don't have time to argue. And one of the things I learned was, although I cared deeply about every story, tomorrow it's literally garbage. So you write something, you put your heart and your soul into it,
Oh
and
man.
tomorrow it is literally garbage. And I'm just not going to get myself worked up over one line in something that tomorrow is garbage. Care deeply about it, but keep it in perspective. And that's really been helpful for the rest of my life.
Wow. You know what's funny is I never ever ever thought about that. But like you're right. It's like the story is so for the moment and so only relevant in that moment that like the next day it's yesterday's news.
Yeah, literally.
That's yeah, exactly literally.
And I mean, when you're writing it, you care so deeply, and your words are so great, and you're such a nah, nah. It's a newspaper story. It's very important. It's very important to get everything right. If they had edited like a fact error in, of course I would have continued to argue, but they never did that. It was always, hey, this is a stupid word, or you could have phrased it better like this, or we think this is clunky, or we don't think it's clunky enough, so we're putting that in to clunkify it. Um,
Yeah.
but tomorrow it's garbage.
Right.
Don't get worked up over garbage.
No, that's true. You said that the St. Pete Times was a 501c3.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to ask you, because there is a lot of, like I know right now, uh, under the current administration, there's been some push to do, with NPR
Mhm.
and PBS and stuff like that. And obviously, like, there's this, notion that news is bought and paid for by ads. And so therefore, a lot of times it drives, the agenda. Whereas like nonprofits, it's more about the story. But then there's this argument that some people make. I don't, but there are those people that say that that nonprofits can also be driven by agenda by the individuals that donate large sums. Did you find that to be true in your experience? Like that did you feel like that they were predominantly moderate donations and that it kept things like how do you feel about the nonprofit news versus profit driven news and and the difference of agendas there.
I think more news is better. More publications covering more stuff is better. And
Hmm.
look, I worked at the St. Petersburg Times was a giant newspaper. The Portland Press Herald, by Maine standards, was a giant newspaper, but it wasn't a very big newspaper. So we were there, covering the town of Cape Elizabeth and, Brunswick. And there were newspaper reporters there at the town council meetings and reading through the stuff and going through what the local issues were on the school board. When news, and that was it. Maybe some other like local, the Falmouth Forecaster or something, small publications would cover it too. But you need to have people covering these things, eyeballs on the human beings making the decisions and seeing what they're doing. Um, Otherwise, they get away with stuff. So letter A is, I think, more news, better. Regarding how the influence that advertisers or donations have, contributors have, there's none. I worked for newspapers for 25 years because I'm old. Uh, and I never once, ever heard, we got some advertisers who are not going to like that. And at the St. Petersburg Times, it was owned again by a 501c3, which is a not-for-profit educational corporation.
Mhm.
And all the money from the St. Pete Times went into the 501c3. So there weren't really donations made to it. It was all poured back in. But in all my years at newspapers, never once was I held back from anything I was saying because there was a political agenda.
That's
People might have been upset. Some publisher somewhere might have been upset. But and at the best newspaper in the country, people say there's a political agenda, but I don't think that there is.
Yeah, it's kind of like I've always it's been frustrating me because I've always sort of felt like that was the case. Not that there was a political agenda, but I always felt like that it wasn't true. But people argued that it was on a consistent basis, and I thought, okay, maybe if CNN is selling tons of ad spots to Pfizer over and over and over again to sell medicine, and then there's a story about Pfizer that one of their vaccines is unsafe, there could be an argument maybe if they're getting all this money from this huge corporation. But then I was still thinking to myself like, but there's this even if it's like the journalists at the lower level, maybe the higher ups might feel some type of way, but the journalists at the lower level they have this sort of pact, which is to report the news. So I almost feel like, and this is what I feel like we've seen throughout history, is when there was pressure from the higher ups who were like, you can't run this story, a lot of times journalists went, all right, well then the hell with you then. I'll go somewhere else, and now I'm going to write the story about how you wouldn't let me tell this story.
Yeah, it happens once in a while.
Yeah.
And there were times when I would write a story and I would feel bad because I was writing about somebody I liked, because you can't help but sort of like some people.
Mhm.
But if they do something that wasn't quite right, you're right the story.
Right.
You keep and I really tried not to have opinions. Whatever opinion I did have, I tried all I could to keep it out of my reporting. And also
Wow.
the line between the news department and the advertising department was really, I mean, they talk about a wall. It really was. So that just it didn't filter either down or up to us.
Interesting. There's a quote that I saw about a week ago, and it was only accredited to some journalism professor. It didn't give a name. It just said journalism professor. But I found it as an interesting quote because it said, if one guy tells you it's raining outside and another guy tells you it's dry, your job isn't to report both of what these people told you. Your job's to look out the window and see for yourself and report on
Yeah.
the truth, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like in today's sort of climate that there is a lot of people in mainstream news that sort of are having this problem of just reporting what each guy's telling them rather than looking outside?
I think that's been going on for a long time, and I think that there's an idea of like false balance. You know, if I'm writing a story about the Ku Klux Klan, you know, doing something terrible, tagging a African American church, I'm going to talk to the minister. I'm going to talk to the parishioners. I'm going to talk to the police, but I'm not necessarily going to call it the Ku Klux Klan to get their side of it.
Mm.
And if you start to do that, it's phony baloney. And I think that that happens with some issues. There's something that's clearly bizarre, and you
It's
if you present it as if it's
like there's
valid, then
right.
you're giving it validity. So it's a funny decision. Who am I to decide if it's valid? Well, as a journalist, it's my job to decide if it's valid, and to talk to experts. And by the way, there is such a thing as experts.
Mm.
Um, my younger brother is a dermatologist. He's the incoming president of the American Academy of Dermatology. When I have a question about dermatology, yeah, I don't go to some dum dum who's out tanning on the street. I go to my brother, the dermatologist.
Right. Exactly. My mother, when I was younger, she used to always say, if you want to know how to fix a sink, ask a plumber. If you want to know how to fix a car, ask a mechanic. Don't ask the mechanic how to fix your sink, and don't ask a plumber how to fix your car.
That's right.
Yeah. And I've always sort of lived by that. Not they always say everyone's entitled to an opinion, and it's like everyone's entitled to an opinion, but not everyone's entitled to have their opinion matter.
And everyone's entitled to opinion, but only people who have facts are entitled to facts.
Right. There is a basis. It's
And
funny.
there is an objective truth. And I think that it's difficult because right now I think that objective truth is being watered down because some people might not like it.
I I agree. I agree with that. When you start to feel like the facts hurt your feelings, you suddenly want the facts to change.
Yes.
And there seems to be I'm trying to remember the guy's name. I don't want to say it wrong, but I feel like his name is Steven Pinker. Steven Pinker, I think is his name is. But he's a Harvard super well-known intellectual, but he wrote a book called When Everyone Knows That Everyone Knows.
Is that
And
Daniel Pink?
I'm not I think it was I think it was
We're
like
gonna look.
yeah, I can actually look so that I can get the right name. Here, let me see. It is um let me see. Yeah, Steven Pinker. Yep,
Yeah, oh,
Steven
there he
Pinker.
is.
Yep.
He's a Canadian psychologist and psycholinguist.
Yeah, he's very, very brilliant guy. And in this book, everybody know or when everybody knows that everybody knows, it's really interesting because it talks about what's considered common knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And basically how if every like he used the example I saw him do an interview on Bill Maher once, and he used the example that like money, like I will do something for money because if I get money, I know money has value because I know that that person will value it and that person knows that someone else will value it. We've all agreed that money has value. So everybody knows that money has value. So it becomes a societal norm, like common knowledge. And he was saying like how well in the book, it's kind of like the idea that back in the day, people might have thought hitting women was like okay and it was culturally accepted. And it took a lot of hard work to make it so that everybody knows it's not okay to hit women or whatever, or to abuse your
By the way,
spouse or
I don't
abuse
think it's.
anybody.
I think that people all really knew that it's never acceptable to hit another person, but they allowed it to happen.
Right. They allowed it to
They,
happen.
they said, well, we can because we're in charge. But they knew somewhere in their heads
You're
that it's
probably
not right.
you're probably right. And so
Let's talk about Pinker for just a second because
okay.
the thing that you just said is really, really interesting. That we have decided that money has value. These
Mhm.
pieces of paper have value.
Right.
Nobody wants money. Nobody wants a bunch of pieces of paper. We want what it will get us. So we have agreed that
Right.
it has this value. But a piece of paper, I went to Europe in June, to Romania and to Italy, and I have some Romanian money still in my wallet. It's just pieces of paper here. It's worthless here.
Right.
There, you traded for goods and services. Uh, we just agree that it is. And
Yeah.
then weird, terrible stuff happens and it all goes to hell, but we won't get into that.
But no, it's true. But it's that common knowledge that he was reflecting on, that he was saying once somebody can tap into that
Mhm.
and be able to change, like if we have this agreed upon foundation of facts that we've all have sort of asserted as common knowledge, and we just sort of agree with them. When you start to really try to brainwash people or push over and over and over again into their minds that something that we used to deem acceptable is now unacceptable, or something that was supposed to be unacceptable is now acceptable, it starts to completely alter everything. Like it totally shapes society completely when you start to make it like, you know, when somebody's like making it like, oh, I'm gonna smack my kid in front of everybody, and then I'm gonna look at everyone with confidence, and I'm gonna tell them that's okay what I just did, and I'm gonna say it with such confidence over and over and over again, like the emperor has no clothes. You know what I mean? And so now everyone just goes, oh no, that's okay. Oh no, that's okay. And when all of a sudden what something was so unacceptable has now been mass agreed upon to be acceptable, it completely changes everything.
You break the social contract.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what the social contract. But another thing happens is that when the truth as we know it is suddenly not just challenged, but told, no, that's not true. Okay, Earth is 93 million miles away from the sun, right?
Mhm.
I don't know how the hell that is. I'm not a physicist, but I
Right.
know Earth is 93 million miles away from the sun. Say somebody tomorrow says, you know what? It's 52 million miles away. You've been wrong all these years. Well, is it really? How did you, oh, I determined that because I did. And I have a study that has been repudiated by everybody, but still, it's 52 million. Then people start to pretend that this bogus thing is as valid as the real thing. So two things happen. The social contract gets broken. And I think part of the social contract is accepting that there are facts.
Yeah. It's
And then people start behaving in antisocial, terrible ways.
it's the lack of trust
Yeah.
in reliable resource. Like if you have reliable sources of information that suddenly become discredited for no reason other than people just want to say my ignorance is as good as your intelligence, and basically just that's their argument, then it's like, okay, so then the entire everything we know and the entire universe and everything is just up for grabs. Who knows? And it's like I don't feel like living in a culture like that is good. And that goes back to what you were saying about reporting the news, is that that's why you can't go decide that there's a reason that's valid that makes being in the Ku Klux Klan okay, because that you're doing exactly that by creating, you're giving validity to that insane argument that completely changes societal norms and causes us to break social contracts, like you said.
And when you're doing it, you know what you're doing. You know, well, I'm putting this in because I have to get an opposing idea in, however ridiculous the opposing. So you put in one little paragraph that it doesn't really put in any balance. It just puts in crazy. And I think in doing so, it makes the whole story less valid in your attempt to make it more valid by putting in another idea. Not a good way to do it.
No. And now you had said a minute ago that you believe the more news the better. Like so
Yep.
that it's sort of and I get what you're coming from, and I do like that idea, but I also know that now in today's sort of tech driven society with social media and everything, it seems like all these sources of information are competing for
Yeah.
views, and they're moving into clickbaity headlines to try to get people to click on things. What sort of negative impacts do you think that's having when, I'll be on social media and I'll have an argument with somebody about something, and I'll start to realize you didn't click on this article and read it, did you? You just read the headline and you're arguing based on what the headline is. And I feel like that's really problematic, but I want to know in your words, how do you feel like that's going to impact or is impacting.
No, it's great. And it goes back too. I remember being at Starbucks in Portland, Maine, talking to somebody about a story in the newspaper, and he said, "No, it said this." And I'm like, "Dude, I wrote it." You just read the headline. Look, one of the problems is clickbait is, oh, we need to get eyeballs on the stories, eyeballs on the stories. The other thing is we need to get it first. No, you don't need to get it first. You need to get it right. So hurrying up to get
Ooh,
it, when you hurry that much to beat somebody else by, 45 seconds, 3 minutes, you're gonna make mistakes. I'd rather be second and be right, or be third or fourth or fifth and be right. Ultimately, that and I think that I worked for a publication for a while that wanted to get everything first, get it out, get it out, get it out. And instead of building a loyal readership, they would try to figure out what was it. Here, I'm going to use a horrible word. What was in the zeitgeist at the moment? Zeitgeist, just kill me. So they try to write stories that people wanted to click on, and so they're always trying to get new eyeballs instead of building a trusted publication that
wow.
people are going to come back to every day.
That is so profound. Wow. Like that's like something that I just never really thought about that, but that's amazing. Like it's better to be late and be accurate than because I remember when the mass shooting in Las Vegas happened. And I was sitting on my couch watching it. It had just broke. I woke up early in the morning. I remember I had a headache. It was a horrible wake up. And I was watching the news and they were talking about, they're like, there's been a shooting in Las Vegas. And then they were like, and I remember they were like, oh, there's multiple people, or there was multiple shooters and like all this stuff. And then like 20 minutes later, they were like walking back. So it turns out there wasn't multiple shooters. There was only one shooter, but they're trying, and then they're like, he was using this type of weapon. And then 30 minutes later, they're like, so it turns out he wasn't using that weapon. He was using this weapon. And I remember telling people, because they were like, conspiracies were born out of this, because they're like, oh, there was two shooters because they reported that first. And it's like, right, they reported that first because they didn't really have all the information, but they kept reporting new information as new information came in. But the problem with trying to be first, like you said, was that it's creating these conspiracy theories, because then people are like, well, no, we know there was multiple shooters. They're hiding something because they said that at first. And it's like,
I remember there was something on the main turnpike once. I don't know if it was a shooting or what, but like it sent me out to do it. And a bunch of rumors sort of swirled around it. Oh, he did this, he's from there. But it was a newspaper. So it wasn't going to be printed till the next day. So I didn't have to. And I remember calling the editors and saying, hey, this is what's going on. I hear this, but I'm not sure. Had we been an online publication at that time, they probably would have zipped that sort of rumor that was floating around. Somebody heard that somebody heard. Not good. But strangely, because we were an older technology, we had more time and we could get it right, and we did.
wow. Wow, man. I mean, like you said that you got to question George W. Bush at the White House.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to know
Right
more
after
about that.
right after his first election, I got a call from the White House saying the president would like to see you on, I don't know, Wednesday. It was like a Monday or something. So I went to see, and I'm excited, right? That the president, and look, he had lived in Maine, or his family had, so we sort of knew one another. So I go to tell the editor, and the only answer to the president wants to see me on Wednesday or Thursday or whatever is go get a haircut and get out there. And she's like, well, let me think about that. Freaking think about it. So I go out there. It's seven reporters from regional newspapers and the president in the Roosevelt Room in the White House. So we're all seated there. It's a very fancy, um, stately kind of room. And then the president walks in. He'd been president for all of 2 weeks or something. He said, hey, how y'all doing? I just want y'all to know I really enjoy being president. As you can imagine, it's an unbelievable experience. And then he sat down and we got into it. And I remember what I asked him about his commitment to the Navy. And he looked at me and he said, well, I understand that you're from Maine, so you're worried about Bath Iron Works. Bath Iron Works, obviously, makes um, naval destroyers. So like he'd been president for 2 weeks. He knew that I was the guy from Maine, and I said the Navy, and he put together Navy, Maine, Bath Iron Works. Okay, it must be Bath Iron. I didn't say Bath Iron Works. He did. And I gained a new respect for President George W. Bush at that moment because you can't expect him to know that, but
Right.
he did. Now later on, somebody from Missouri asked him about his commitment to civil rights, and he gave a really good answer for that too. He said, "Now I understand that what you're worried about is Ashcroft." John Ashcroft was his attorney general and was from Missouri. He said, "I understand that some people have some concerns about Ashcroft, and they're concerned that this and concern." And I did something that you very rarely do in your life. I interrupted the president and I said, "Sir, are the concerns valid?" Because just acknowledging concerns isn't good enough. And yeah, and it's difficult to ask the president, are they valid concerns? And he gave a pretty good, dodgy but good answer. He said, "Look, if people have concerns, it's my job to prove them wrong."
Wow. Wow. You
And then he
know,
said, then he said to us, "So, y'all want to see the Oval Office?" So
and
he brings us into the Oval Office, and people get out of your way when the president is taking you to the Oval. Yeah, this here's the Oval Office. No, down there, that's my private dining room. I got a private dining room. Want to see it? It was great.
that is incredible. So you got to go into the Oval Office.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's so crazy. You know, a lot of people at the time, because I remember just, with the whole Democrats Republican stuff, people were just always sort of trashing him, and I look back. And especially now, when I see interviews of him talking now, and he seems like just such a great guy. Like, he really just seems like a great guy, and his heart was in the right place. I saw Barack Obama giving a speech at John McCain's funeral,
Mm.
and George Bush was crying. I mean, he had like liquid in his eyes. Like, he's definitely a very empathic human being. And I feel like, I think that was something that obviously in the politics is politics, and everyone's going to be politicize everything, but just from a humanitarian level, like, because my thing is with anybody is, regardless of politics or any of that, I just want to know, like, I'm a firm believer that every human being was born into a circumstance that they had no control over, and we spend the rest of our lives reacting to our environment. And that's just the truth with every single person on the planet. So if you're somebody who understands that and are empathic to it, then we're buddies. If you're somebody that isn't, and you have apathy towards everybody else, and you feel like, you want to be judgmental and think everyone else is making excuses, or you're heartless about what happens to other people, then we can't be friends. And I'm not going to really like you that much.
And W
you
had it.
know,
And
he,
when
he
President
seemed,
Clinton said, "I feel your pain," he meant it.
yeah.
And I really liked a lot of the politicians I wrote about. By the way, I met John McCain in Maine.
Wow.
Um, and I
Wow.
mean, the man was a hero. He was an actual hero. But what he endured in Vietnam was horrendous. And he was very clear, and he looked at you clearly. And I was surprised because he was very, very, very soft spoken. But he and good politicians listened really well and was interested in stuff.
Wow.
The other side of that, one time I was, in fact, I interviewed Mrs. Clinton one time when she was first lady in her car on the way from one event to another. And she was the same way. She really listened, and she just wasn't as good on television as she was in person. Howard Dean, I interviewed again in a car, and we were in Maine, we drove from the airport somewhere in the old port, and we drove past my old apartment building on Commercial Street. And I pointed to him, "That's my apartment building." And he kind of grunted. Almost any human being would say, "Oh, really? What's it like? You live there? How do you?" They're interested in stuff. He didn't seem interested in another human being. And maybe he was having a bad day. I don't know. But almost every other politician I've ever had the good fortune to meet has been interested in other people and interested in the world. And I think otherwise they wouldn't have gotten into it.
Wow. That, I had no idea that you were able to interview people like Hillary Clinton and John
Yeah.
McCain. That is like,
And Senator Mitchell, George Mitchell, the former majority leader of the Senator from Maine, lived down the hall from me at Baxter Place in Maine. Senator Mitchell negotiated the Good Friday Accords in Northern Ireland. And I spent the entire day that they voted with Senator Mitchell. Um,
wow.
and he is a great man. And he said, he talked about redemption, personal redemption, not in a religious way, but the ability to redeem oneself. And I didn't believe in it. I thought, tiger stripes forever. And he said, look, I sat at the peace table with people who had been convicted of murder and had served their sentences and had literally become men of peace. People can change. And I did at that moment. I changed my mind at that moment.
Wow.
Some of these people are just great leaders, and I think Senator Mitchell is.
That's you're giving me a lot of faith in humanity.
I have a lot of faith in humanity.
You do?
Yes.
I try, but I'll tell you, it's hard. It is really hard. Like, humanity gives me a lot of reasons to lose faith daily, but I try to keep hanging on, man. I really do. When you talk about John McCain, I loved that man for one major reason. One major reason that I witnessed, I saw, that I said, this, when it comes to this man, is, I mean, like, so important. When he was running for president and he was standing on stage and a woman in the crowd started screaming about Obama and was like, he's a Muslim, he's a terrorist, or she said some crazy nonsense like that. He looked at her and he said, that's not true. That's not true. He's a good man. We disagree on things politically, but he's a very good man. And we're just running for president. Like, he's not. And a lot of people in hindsight were trying to say that that's why he lost. And I think that it didn't matter to him. He would have, I think if he were alive today and you would have asked him, knowing that you may have lost because you did that, would you do it again? And I think he'd say yes, 1,000,000 times over. I think he'd rather not be president than feed that beast.
Thommy, do you want to get it right or do you want to get it first?
Right. Exactly.
And Senator McCain was a man of honor. And one of the reasons that our system has worked for these 225 years is that, or 50 years, whatever the hell it is that political opponents have been political opponents, not enemies. And when suddenly the other side is made to be a monster, then you have a big problem. And way back when, Senator Mitchell and Strom Thurmond, maybe not Strom Thurmond, but one of those guys could have, after fighting in the Senate, could go out and talk and listen. I hope that still happens, but I don't know whether it does. It's just different ideas about how the country should be. And I really, really, really think it used to be the people voted the way they did in the Senate and the House because they thought it was right. President George W. Bush and I probably disagreed on certain things, but I never, ever thought that he was doing something for some cynical reason. I always believed that his decisions were based on what he genuinely thought was right for the country, that he had a basic respect for the institutions of government and the Constitution and everything else. When that starts to go away, and when we can't even agree on what facts are, it's a big problem.
Yeah,
but I'm still optimistic.
It's true. I actually explained it to somebody like this once, that if you could picture a giant platform with a beautiful house on top of it, and underneath holding that platform are these two giant pillars, and everybody's arguing which pillar should we tear down, the right one or the left one. It doesn't matter, because if either one of you get your way, everything on that platform is going to come crashing down.
And it's going to come crashing down on you, crush your feet.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. It's like you need them both, man. You need them both. And that's the thing is like, the argument is what makes America what it is the argument. It's the fact that there's always going to be two sides that are pushing and pulling and pushing and pulling, and you start to try to make the entire other side the enemy, and the whole
Vilifying
thing
other human
falls
beings
apart.
is generally a bad idea. And vilifying other human beings for opinions is a bad idea.
Yeah, yeah, and generalizing and making sweeping general statements about any group of people is a bad idea. I used to have a serious problem with that when I was in my mid-20s. I would always be like, well, women feel this way, and black guys, they think this way, or whatever. And it took my friend Christine one time. She was like, "You generalize a lot." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she like told me, she's like, "You're really gonna like, if you ever wanted to be successful at anything, you need to stop doing that." And I'm really glad she told me that, because I had to do a personal inventory. I was like, wow.
And
Like,
you did. And you did what smart people do. You questioned your own deeply held beliefs. And when you found that one of them was wrong, you were mentally agile enough to ditch it and use one that's better.
it's,
And by the way, you were in your 20s. There was a guy named William F. Buckley Jr. who was
oh,
a magazine editor and writer and political thinker
yeah, that
whom I
was
knew. And we were talking about a political thing that was going on at Dartmouth University, or Dartmouth College rather. And he said to me, a sophomore is a sophomore. And you were in your 20s. When you're in your 20s, you do bonehead things that 20-year-olds do.
right.
Um, and when you're a sophomore, you do sophomore things. Um, so it's a long way of saying, give yourself a break.
Right, right. Well, is that would that be? Wait a minute. Was that William F. Buckley Jr., the son of
Yeah.
William F. Buckley, as in the National Review? William F.
No,
Buckley?
that's William F. Buckley Jr. was the
Wow,
founder of the National Review.
wow. And you've met him.
Oh yeah.
Wow, man. Wow. He was vehemently opposed to the John Birch Society movement,
Yep.
which I feel like is sort of the underlying alt-right kind of thing that kind of came in, that started to kind of creep its way into what's sort of arguing against facts today. So that's interesting. That's
He,
interesting
he
that you,
was he was sort of the father of what was then the modern conservative movement. Oh, it's going to hold my microphone. Let's see, are we there? We're
yeah.
back.
Oh yeah, yeah. I got you.
Uh, and he was a very thoughtful guy. A lot of his political ideology came from his religion. He was a very faithful Catholic guy. Um, and he was his first book was called God and Man. Yeah, I'm not going to get into Bill Buckley, but he was an extremely agile, interesting thinker, and I think intellectually honest.
That's all you can ask for. It's really all you can ask for, and I'm really glad that you have that you. But that actually brings me into. I want to talk about your book in a
Okay.
second that you're working on, because that relates to what you just said. But before we go into that, I do have one last question about the journalism thing. What is the like? Do you have like a favorite story, or like a thing, like one story that really stood out to you that you covered that really was like I don't know, sort of like your proudest work, or like something that you recall as being just one of the most important you've ever done?
Look, every story when I was writing it was the most important story. Otherwise, I wouldn't
Fair
have
enough.
argued with Joe the way I did.
And then of course the next day it wasn't anymore.
Right. The next day was garbage. I wrote a story. I got a call one day from the Cumberland County Jail from someone saying, "Hey, do you write stories about people?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's generally what I do." And the guy explained to me that he was in jail, that his father had been in jail. He was a heroin addict. And this guy, he was a poor guy in Maine. and he just wanted his story told. And from the time he was born, this guy Jamie was he was sentenced to jail from the moment he came out of the womb. He he was born into poverty. Um, there were no expectations that he'd ever get out of it. When the police saw him, they knew that family and they knew that he was scum and they treated him like that. And I felt compelled to write about him. Um,
Wow.
and he was born a little baby, with tiny fingers and great hopes, and they were all crushed, and he didn't have a chance. Um, and I told his story, and I believe the people who do wrong things need to be punished for it, but there needs to be some compassion and some understanding of why he was in the situation he was in. It's luck. It's luck that I was born into the family that I was born into.
Hmm.
And this guy, and he's a good guy. I don't know what's happened to him. I don't know if he's still alive. Um, but he had hopes and dreams just like anybody else. Telling his story was really important to me. There was another guy who was a medical marijuana user way back when, before that was a thing that was sort of mainstream. And he was very, 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 very sick. He got HIV because he had hemophilia, and the blood transfusions gave him HIV. And the only thing that gave him relief was smoked marijuana, and it was illegal. And I told his story. Um, and he had seizure, all kinds of stuff. And I think those two stories, because they were stories, have stayed with me.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so how does somebody who, well, like you said, I know you want to see bad people be punished and so forth, but um, with your experience and you covering stuff like that and seeing stuff like that, how does someone like you come out so optimistic and wanting to write a book about optimism?
Yeah, I'm writing a book about optimism, a guide to optimism. You talked about if one person says it's raining and one person says it's not, you look out the window. There's another journalism thing. Some editor somewhere said, if your mother says she loves you, you give her a good kick in the shin and see if she really does. That's a horrible way to look at the world.
Oh my
Um,
goodness. Yeah.
and the newspapers, again, a newsroom is a wonderful place that's filled with dedicated, smart, quirky, crazy people. But they sometimes do tend to get cynical because people are always trying to spin you and all kinds of nonsense. Um, and a newsroom can be a cynical or negative place. I don't think it should be, but it can be. And I sort of fell into that. Um, and I thought it was tough to be a pessimist or cynical. No, no, no. It's a terrible way to be. It gets in the way of happiness. And ultimately, I think that's all we want. I was walking one day. I decided that I was too negative. So I decided to see a shrink to talk about my negativity. So I'm walking to the shrink's office, and somebody's walking past me, and he's on the phone. And I hear him say to whoever it is he's talking to, "Yeah, I'm doing really good." And he's walking past me. And I said out loud after I was passed, "You're doing really well, you fucking idiot." Then I laughed at myself. Can't I just be happy that that guy's doing really good? What's it to me if he's not doing really good? I'm much happier for the guy that he's doing really good. It makes my life better. Our friend
Right.
Dave Gutter, Dave won a Grammy.
He
The
did.
day he won, I was sitting in this apartment and my phone rang and it said Gutter Dave. And I picked it, and I knew he was at the ceremony. I'm like, "Dave, what's up?" He said, "We won." Dude, I was so happy. It was as if I had won.
Right. Exactly.
And I realized I can take all of Dave's happy, and Dave gets to keep all of his happy. And suddenly there's twice as much happy in the world.
Wow.
And that's what I want. That's how I want things to be. I don't want to be bitter. I don't want to be negative. Pessimism has never done anybody any good. People who do big things are optimists. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it in the first place. They wouldn't have even tried because what's the point?
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that you look at the world through, silly colored glasses or you think everything's hunky dory when it's not. Um, but there's a difference. There's a difference between optimism and toxic positivity.
I agree with that completely. You know, well, because I feel like toxic positivity becomes kind of like a drug. It's
Yep.
almost the same thing as somebody just getting high to avoid feelings. There are people that remain toxically positive who end up committing suicide because the entire time they were really not solving anything. They were just trying to like,
Well,
you know,
they're in denial. I mean,
right, delusional
people,
or yeah, denial.
bad stuff happens, and when it does, if you say, "Oh no, that's not bad. That's not really happening," then you're just denying it, and you can't deal with it. And our sort of negative feelings are warning signs. It's an icky meter or when you feel something wrong, you got to say, "Uh-oh, what's up? Why am I feeling this? What is it I'm really feeling, and how come?" And then you can actually address it. But toxic optimism says, or toxic positivity rather says, "Nope. If you say it's not good, then you're not being positive enough, and then you're bad, and then you feel guilty for not being positive enough, and it gets you into the spiral." A friend of mine
Exactly.
was on vacation, and he did something, and he hurt his leg, and he got back in his ankle or something. He got back, and his leg was in terrible shape, and finally he went to the doctor, and he needed surgery. He had messed up his ankle really badly. So it's the toxic positivity um, is kind of like that. You deny it, and your ankle just gets worse, and you need surgery.
Yeah.
Um, so when unwanted events happen, got to acknowledge they're unwanted, and then you can do something about them.
Absolutely. It's like remain positive that you'll overcome the issue, but don't deny that it exists
Right?
just to remain positive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of pressure, a lot, especially with social media, where I know a lot of people. I live, well, you do too. We live in the land of that. It's everywhere out here, and I know a lot of people suffering from that, and it's kind of hard because if I call them and I know they're going through something, and if I bring up that they're, hey, like, or then it's like, I don't want to talk about that. Let's not be negative.
Ah,
And it's like, talking about that isn't negative. Talking about that is positive. Trying to talk through it and find a way to get past it is positive. Not talking about it is negative. What are you talking about? You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, what's not helpful is, oh, yeah, at least be thankful that you have that, because that has nothing to do with this. I'm sad I got this going on. Well, be happy you have a bicycle. No. Um, but
It's so true, man.
by ignoring it, like you just said, no, that doesn't. It ignoring something prevents you from addressing it. That's just never helpful.
Yeah, I can't even begin to tell you how many times I'll like be like something will happen. I'll be frustrated. Like I'm working on something right now, and I had this investor who was gonna finance something, not a lot of money, just like 15 grand. And I was like, yes, this is gonna be amazing. We'll be able to do this. And then I set all this stuff up, and then he had bad news and told me he couldn't do it. And I was frustrated because I was like, man, why does this have to happen? And I was sharing it with a friend of mine, and I'm like, yeah, this, and he was just like, well, just be grateful that, you like are doing, and I'm just like, it's like, dude, you know what, man? Like,
Yeah,
shut
it's
up.
not helpful to say somebody's dead. Oh, at least he's in a better place. What, an urn? No. I mean, just address what's going on. By the way, you said you thought to yourself, oh, why does this have to happen? It's not a helpful question. Why does this have to happen? Because that reinforces the idea. The premise of the question is that this has to happen. So shift it from why does this have to happen to how can I deal with this in a way that I like?
That is that's wise words. Because it almost does sound like when you say why does this happen, that you're living your life thinking that things happen to you as
Right.
opposed to thinking that you make things happen. It is not a good mindset. But I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but because again, I don't want to generalize, but I feel like it's very hard sometimes in the moment to not feel like a victim when things like that happen.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it takes a moment to kind of go through it. You call your friends, you call the people that you know will care. You kind of cry about it a little bit, but then you toughen up and you go, okay, all right, whatever. It is what it is. Time to move past it,
Yeah.
you know?
And what's next? And by the
Right.
way, that guy, I don't know what happened, but he was wrong. He was wrong. He probably would have done much better, investing his 15 drawer into your project, and it would have been good. I've applied for jobs that I was wildly qualified for. Um, I applied for one job that I was overwhelmingly qualified for, and one of the top people in the company said, "Oh, that sounds great. You'd be perfect for that." And they didn't even say no. Finally, one day I went onto their online portal, and it said something to the effect of "This space is empty," and that's how I found out I didn't get the job. So I
Oh,
texted my friend. I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't get it." And I was bummed out because I could feel myself, and just like you had that idea how it was going to go, and you could taste it. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to get this much money, and I'm going to buy this for my mom, and I'm going to do this, and then suddenly it wasn't there. It's their house. They get to furnish it any way they want, and if they want brown shag carpeting, they can get brown shag carpeting.
yep. Nothing you can do about
Yeah.
that.
Uh, And I to this day, I think they made a boneheaded decision, but it's their decision for their company. And okay, let's move on. I'm closer to something good.
Yeah. Well, with optimism, sometimes I think people tend to believe that you're naive
Yeah.
when you try to be optimistic about things. Well, because and I think that I really because I've thought a lot about this subject in my own head, just thinking a lot about it, and I've realized that like, yeah, in the end, everybody dies. In the
Okay.
end, we all die, right? So it's gonna end on bad news for everybody, and so there's no denying that. But um, I think like if you go outside of yourself and make it less about you and more about humanity and more about everybody, you might die, but humanity continues. And so even if we all die and it's bad news in the end for everybody and that's the end all be all end, then it's like if you're looking at it from the perspective of humanity, and I know, okay, oh well, every star will die, every planet will die, everything will die, or whatever. But it's like, okay, but like think about when you think about it from the perspective of like, okay, uh, anything I do will impact somebody, and that person will impact somebody else, and that person will impact somebody else, and I might die, but that impact is going to continue, right? So when you're thinking about the world and you're thinking about humanity and you're thinking about like what's going on right now politically and where we are in this kind of climate and everything, and social media and its impact on information and all this stuff, you feel that in the overall scheme of things, that humanity will always find a way to endure past all of this, right? Like,
It has.
right? Yeah. I mean, yeah, because I mean, like, one
And
can.
and, te and terrible shit has happened. Um, this I keep this. It's a quote from Colin Farrell. It says, "We're going to die, and we're going to make serious mistakes."
It's true.
And by the way, that's not negative. We're gonna die, and we're gonna make serious mistakes. And so, what do we do with it? You just pointed out we're gonna die. We have a very short period of time on this earth. And so I think that our responsibility is to extract every quantum of joy that we possibly can, because every moment that we spend being miserable is a moment we could have spent being happy. I want to be happy.
Uh, it's
And
it,
and there's some things you can do. When I use the phrase a lot, you're a good egg. People, I never realized it until people started to tell me, say, oh, you're a good egg. And so now when I think of somebody, I'll text them just an emoji of an egg, and they'll know that I'm saying, I love you.
that's
And
great.
just do that. When you get an impulse to do something kind, do it. And and then there's twice as much happy. Dave keeps his happy. I get my happy. And I can make somebody else happy, and Dave and I get to keep our happy.
Yeah, it's that's really beautiful. It's like too because I feel like as a person that because like I said, I created this podcast because I know so many wonderful people. I have been somebody and notoriously, I think if you ask anyone who knows me, they'll verify this. I'm a huge giver. I always want to go back and give to people. I take people out to eat. I give money to homeless people. I'm like I help friends when they need money for rent or they need a ride or they need like I'm always giving, giving, giving. And then sometimes I feel like I get exhausted by it, I guess, and then I need someone. And then in that moment when I need someone, I don't feel like I have that many people. And so there ends up being a resentment sometimes where I start to resent how kind I am. And then I'm like, why is it that I expel all this energy to be so great to all these people and really care genuinely about everyone else's well-being and I'm trying to help all these different people. But then when I feel like I need a lift of support, there is no one to do that. And so I think like I don't know if sometimes maybe there's certain people close to me who do that, and in that moment I'm blind to it, or or if it's true, or if I feel like it's not coming back to me. And then there's a whole well, don't do things expecting things back, and it's like I don't do things expecting things back, but I do sometimes just wish that people were as caring and as generous as me.
Yeah, and there are some. And so look, here's what you're saying is you do all this stuff with genuinely a pure heart and with the idea in Judaism we have a concept called tikkun olam, which means to repair the universe. That we are in this endeavor with God to perfect the universe. And that's what you're doing. You're doing things genuinely for the right reasons, to make the world a better place, to ease somebody's burden. And that in itself, by the way, is enough. But what you're saying is you do all this stuff, and once in a while, you just want somebody to say, hey, yeah, Tommy, that was great, which is human. And then they don't, and you get a little bit resentful. You're like, what's the point? And then you look out and somebody's being an asshole to somebody else. You're like, "Ah, what can I do? So what can you do? You go out and do something nice for somebody else. And you recognize that in doing so, you're making the world better. You put the shopping cart back in the space where it belongs. You smile at somebody on the street, little things. And by the way, it can be mercenary too. And I think that people should do the right thing for the right reason, like you do. Um, but when you do nice stuff, you get stuff. Um, you get you say hello to the hostess in the restaurant, and you're nice to her. She gives you a better table. You get an upgrade at the hotel, whatever it is. I spent a month in April on a jury, a criminal jury, a horrible, horrible case here in Los Angeles. And after a few days, when you go in, there are deputies at the courthouse door. I'd say good morning and stuff. And one day I was leaving with another juror, and I saw the security guard, and I said, "See you later, Henry. I'll see you tomorrow." He said, "Good night, Joshua." And she turned to me and she said, "Do you make friends with everybody?"
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yes.
they're nice people. It
Yeah.
makes my life better to hear, "See you tomorrow, Joshua," and to be appreciated.
That's really funny. I brought my 11-year-old son to LA for the first time a couple weeks ago, and he said the exact same thing. Everywhere I went, he was like, "Man, you make friends with literally everybody, the barista at the coffee place, and I tip heavy. I'm a big heavy tipper, and I've noticed that it like this place I go to in LA that I go to eat at, this cafe. I made a habit for the longest time of giving them a certain amount of money every time I tip them, and all of a sudden I started noticing that when I'd go in there in the morning and I just wanted a coffee, they would go, "Go ahead, you don't need to pay," and they just start treating me like that all the time. They're like, "You're family. You come in here, you want a coffee, you can have one every morning." I'm like, wow, and it's like I completely understand what you're saying. And I think that like maybe that's what the issue is that I need to remember that I am getting a lot of it back. I think my frustration is maybe that I might not be getting it from certain people that I'd like to see it from.
Yeah.
But you can't really control that. And when you mentioned the Judaism thing, I noticed too that what you were saying earlier about what was it that you had said about doing something? What was it that you had said? But it was something from the Kabbalah. It was the Kabbalah or the is it called the Kabbalah or the is that it? The Kabbalah.
Kabbalah is mysticism. Yeah.
Or yeah, the book. There was some. It was like
The Talmud.
That might be what I'm thinking of. It's like an ancient thing where it's been passed down from Jewish.
Yeah, that's the Talmud. It's the oral law as opposed to the written law.
That's what I'm thinking of. And there was something in there that said something that if you do something, no matter what it is, if you do something like you build a building or you do a favor for someone or whatever, the moment you do anything, if you're when you are expecting for a reward for what you did, as you're expecting that reward, you're actually robbing yourself of ever getting it. And it isn't until you let go of ever wanting a reward at all for what you did when that blessing comes, right? That's like a belief, I believe, right? Somebody was telling me that recently.
I haven't heard that, but I love it. Look, if you do something with an agenda, then you're doing it with an agenda, and it just won't be as good. If you do stuff, and look, we do certain things, we have expectations for the things we do. I work for a day, I expect to be paid for the day. But some expectations are unreasonable. So we keep our expectations reasonable. And in some cases, we just drop them. We smile at somebody just because we smile at them. And the reward frequently is less obvious in that, nobody gives me a cookie, but somebody else is smiling. Somebody else feels, but you open the door for somebody. My letter carrier is terrific. She gets me in my mail, but she's just nice. And on really hot days, I hand her a bottle of water. And in return, I get a smile from her, and I feel better.
And that's the reward, really. I mean,
exactly.
Like, you're not holding on to any negativity, and that's a great reward for itself.
And she walks away from it feeling a little better too. It's hot outside. She's got a bottle of water. Somebody was nice to her. Somebody acknowledged her basic humanity. And that's the reward, is you just feel better. You become more connected. And maybe that's one of the things that's lacking in this world, is this idea of connection. There's a book there called The Good Life, which was written by a couple of Harvard psychiatrists and a psychologist. And the whole idea of it is happiness is connection.
It's funny because I 100% agree with that. You brought up Dave, our mutual friend Dave Gutter. I sent him a text recently because it had occurred to me. I was thinking about this, and I thought, when you create something, like for instance, me and him are in the entertainment industry. We were both doing music for a long time. When you create music, for instance, we'll use that as an example. If your motive is, I want to be known as I want to be famous, or I want to be known as the best guitarist or the best singer, or I want to be, the richest. I want to sell the most albums, right? If your goal is those reasons, then you're not creating art anymore. You're creating a product, which you now have to become a businessman to sell a product. So if you lack business skills, entrepreneurial skills, marketing skills, and all the sort of skills required to be successful in business, then you're going to fail because you're just trying to sell a product. But when your only goal, specifically only, is to have impact on people, a positive impact, or develop a connection, like you were saying, with the viewer, the listener, the person who's going to consume your art in any way. When your only goal is impact and connection, now you're an artist. So if you're saying, I'm making this song because I want someone to hear it, and I want them to think about their life, and I want them to feel, I want them to cry and be like, wow, I can be a better person, or I want to do something.
That's it. You want them to feel it. You want them to feel something.
Yeah.
And you're touching their soul. And you want a lot of people to hear it and to love. I wrote a script that I still love, a sci-fi script, and CAA sent me to this meeting with some people at Bad Robot, which is J.J. Abrams' production company, and they said to me, "We just wanted to meet the person whose mind came up with this." They didn't buy it. I want a lot of people to buy it. I want it to be a series. I want everybody to see it, but they read it, and they read it carefully, and they asked me good questions about it. And I thought to myself, in the moment they were reading it, the characters lived and breathed, and then they shut the script and they're in suspended animation. And one day, this person from Bad Robot is going to be somewhere and see something that reminds them of something they read once. They won't remember it was my script. They'll just remember, hey, I read something like that. And for a flash, those characters will once again live and breathe. And that's good enough. I want everybody to see them, but that's good enough. In life, okay, I could walk outside today and an anvil could fall down from the sky on my head and kill me.
Hopefully
I do not want an anvil to fall down. I don't want anything. I got a lot of stuff I still want to do, but it could. I could die now. And although I don't want that to happen, it will have been enough. I've done some stuff. I've been some places. I've loved some people. Some people have loved me. I think I made their lives better. Isn't that enough?
Yeah. It's funny. It should be. That really should be it. The greatest compliment I ever got in my entire life was that a soldier messaged me on Facebook one time and told me that in Iraq he was thinking about committing suicide, and that one of the songs that I had put out on an old album saved his life and kept him from wanting to commit suicide. I cried when I read this message. It moved me so deeply that I was completely I mean, I even told people close to me, I said, even if, I never sold 1 million albums, no, I never became famous, it doesn't matter. That one compliment was the most ridiculous, overwhelming, I mean, you can't get any better than that. I was hanging out with a guy the other day. His name is Monty, and he's an artist. He does some stuff with Krampus. I'm not sure yeah. And he had said to me that he was out to eat with a friend of his. And then his friend said, so why'd you pick this diner? And the friend said, oh, I have a crush on the waitress. And he said, but I'm too scared to talk to her. And he said, oh, so at the end of eating, he got up and on his way to pay, walking out, his friend was still at the table and, finishing his coffee or whatever he was doing. He said to the waitress, hey, my friend has a crush on you. And he comes here all the time because he has a crush on you, but he doesn't know how to tell you. I just thought I'd let you know that. I'm leaving, but I just thought I'd let you know that. And he walked out. And 2 years later, he was doing an art show, and that guy and that girl showed up at the art show and had been going out for the 2 years since. And then he said it was another year or so later that they got married. And he was in tears telling me this story because he's like, I made that happen. You know what I mean? And it's when you think about stuff like that, to me, my God, that is really what it's all about. That's really what it's all about for me. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but that's really, I love that kind of thing more than anything in the world. you know, more than money or success, any of that stuff. It's not. It doesn't really do anything for you. I've gotten to a place in my life where my business has made me way more money now than I've ever made in my life. And I am very happy financially. Like it's great, but it didn't. It made certain things like I'm able to wake up and provide myself with a certain lifestyle of comfort that I've never been able to provide myself with, and that's great. But it didn't, other than those comforts, it didn't fulfill me. The money didn't fulfill me. None of it fulfills me in any kind of way. You know what I mean? Like it's not really, it doesn't make a difference really. You know, on the,
We've both had money and not have money. Having money is more fun. And
sure. Yeah.
it's certainly easier, and money can help just get stuff. It's like we talked about, it's just pieces of paper. I have a friend who's very, 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 very rich, preposterously rich. And I went hiking with another friend of mine, my friend Aton. And Aton pointed at some houses around Runyon Canyon and said, wouldn't it be cool to be that guy and just to be able to look at a house and just be able to buy the house? Like, yeah, it would be cool to be able to do that, but he can't enjoy a hike more than you and I can.
Right. We can only enjoy it the same. That's so true, man. Oh my goodness. That is so true. That's unbelievable. It's it's really you do a podcast called Mental Radio, or you
Yeah.
work on a podcast.
Yeah. At the beginning of the pandemic, my friend Shadow Stevens and I had started to write a pilot for a TV series. Then the pandemic happened and we decided, okay, we got to do something. We got to do something. And we're entertainers. What do we do? We write. I'm a writer. What do you do? We write. So we started this podcast just to make people feel better, a sketch comedy podcast. I'd never done anything like that before. And we did about 20 episodes. And now it might be, we're talking about turning it into a stage presentation at the Montalban Theater here in LA.
Wow.
And it's a whole different kind of writing, because it's essentially radio show. It's just for the ears. So with a motion picture, when you write something, if there's a hospital, you just do an establishing shot, exterior hospital day, and then you're inside the hospital. You know where you are. When you're writing essentially a radio play, you can't do that. There has to be a narrator or something like that. So we did that, and nobody could be anywhere. So I bought a microphone, um, and I started to I would record my parts and email them to Shadow, and he'd do his. And we had some other actors who did the same thing, and it was just a lot of fun. And some of what we did, I'm really proud of. It's at mentalradio.net. Um, we haven't done a new episode in way too long. Maybe we will, because we've been focused on this stage show, and we'll see what happens with that.
Nice. Well, did you like I mean, so you I know you haven't done any sort of sketch writing for a podcast before, but you've done sketch writing before, or you've done writing, like comedy writing or writing and stuff like that for other stuff before, or have you not at
Well, I
all?
mean, so some of what I've written has been funny. Some of the scripts that I've written that I've pitched that haven't gotten sold. Uh,
Mm,
so
nice.
it wasn't entirely new, but writing it just for the ear and actually having actors perform it, um, was just terrifically fun. Um, and getting to perform, and I performed a lot of it too. We had this one guy who's a German nihilist, because that's the best kind of nihilist. Um, and he talks like this here, and he has a Schnauzer, and nothing matters. But he always says, he'll be talking about someone's phone. He'll say, "Yeah, we have phones in Germany, only ours are better. Ours are phonier." And getting to do that, just yeah, we have tables in Germany, only ours are better. Ours are tablier. Uh, Being able to bring that stuff in and to voice it. Yeah, when I was a child in by the Hofstadtborgplatz in Wald, um, doing that was just fun.
Sorry, I just realized that my ringer was not off.
Ah,
Sorry. No, that's like really cool. So if you end up doing this in a theater,
mhm.
are you guys going to act it out, or are you going to find people to act it out?
No, no, we would do it. I mean,
Wow.
we Shadow Stevens was on the radio for a long time. He's a member. He was recently inducted into the National Radio Hall of Fame, and he mixed this thing beautifully. And so, and there's more music in it, the stage show, than I think we need. So, Shadow, if you're listening, we got to get rid of some of the music. Um, it would be us. It would be us performing it. Now, I don't think that we'd be acting it out like on Saturday Night Live or in Living Color or anything. I think that we'd be saying it like a radio show.
Wow.
And we'd have really cool visuals and stuff behind it. Um, it has to be a big immersive thing in order, I think, to make it work for a live audience.
And when you do it, you'll be doing it for the art, not for the money.
Yeah, I mean, look, we did one
But
table read, and we had a tiny, tiny audience of people who knew us, plus our sound people and some stuff like that. And we sat around in a circle and we performed the show, really just us. And it felt great.
wow.
Felt great. I would love, and I could picture myself going to the theater every night and
Amazing.
doing that.
Oh man, I've thought about on a constant basis just finding a theater near me and just going down there and participating in some things just to do it. You know,
Well, next time we do a thing at the Montalban, I'll let you know. You'll come.
I would love that. Seriously, even if it's just to stand there and just watch. Obviously, you know, I mean, like I'm a fan of theater. I'm a big time fan of theater. I'm a fan of the arts in general. Like, but well, that's that I think like if I could put my finger on what seems to be the real theme of this entire discussion is that is just, you know, art and impact, like in connection, like you were talking about, you know, true happiness. When your book Optimism that you're
Mhm.
writing, when do you think that'll be done? I'm just out of
Well,
curiosity.
I want to. You'll know it. I'm not going to say I need to finish it. I want to, because if you say need to, then that's really heavy, and you're putting a lot of expectations, and you turn it from something that you want to do into a chore. I want to have my first draft finished by the end of October. I'm not going to get a publisher. I'm publishing through Kindle Direct Publishing, so you'll be able to get on Amazon, and I'll tell you all about it then. We'll maybe do another one of these. So it
Yeah.
should be available on Amazon. I'm not going to tell you the title of it yet because
Okay.
I'm not superstitious. I just don't want anybody to steal it. Uh,
Okay.
but it should be on Amazon by mid-January.
Okay. That's good to I'm actually going to be setting up a studio space that I'm going to design to actually have guests come in and I
Yeah,
had that once before. And then COVID hit and
yeah,
nobody wanted to travel to me anymore, so it kind of broke everything, but I'm going to redo that again. So the next time we're on, since you're in LA, I'll probably just have you come and we'll
great.
talk in person. There is one other thing I really want to ask you before
Okay.
we wrap up. Every time I have a guest on the show, I
Mhm.
always ask them, or I always ask them to give me a question to ask the next guest. It's just something that I do at the end of everything. But for now, I need to ask you a question that the last guest wanted me to ask the next guest,
Okay.
and that was when you are going to sleep at night, what is it that you think about to help you fall asleep?
Everybody I love.
Really?
Yeah. When I'm falling asleep, I think of everybody I love and I try to picture them. And then when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is the same thing.
Wow. That's a really beautiful way to live your life. That is like a really, really beautiful way to live your life.
I fall asleep in a good mood and then I wake up in a good mood because I'm thinking of the people I love.
You know, I got to be honest. When you put out a book about optimism, I'm reading that
All
a
right.
100% because um, what I love, what I've always loved about you, every time we've ever hung out, is that you really do embody like a really beautiful positive energy. And like it's not fake. It's not like you said toxic or a big show. It's so genuine and so authentic that I would really want to know like what you have to say about optimism, and really want to know how I can apply certain things in my life. Not to suggest that it's a motivational book, but I bet you in a way it'll be very motivating regardless, whether you meant for that or not.
I hope it helps people out, because
Yeah, I think it will. I think it will, because you're just that type of person. So for the next guest, what would be a question that you would want me to ask the next guest?
where do you get your passion?
Okay. Straightforward. I like that a lot. That's a really good question. That'll get them talking for sure.
And at least get them talking about what they're passionate about.
Yes. Yes, that is true. Where do you get your passion? Okay. And my last thing, I guess, is there anything, I know you don't have the book coming out until, you were saying hopefully, or that you want to have it out by January, but is there anything that you would want me to promote link wise under this video when it comes out, like anything like that?
I have,
or anything you want to bring up?
I would like to write some more stuff on my website, which people can go to joshualweinstein.com and see. And also people ought to go to mentalradio.net and listen to the podcast. And if there's parts of it they like, they should listen again. And if there are parts of it they don't like, well, scroll past them to the next thing. We did we did one thing. It's two radio shows. One is a morning DJ, and the other is a national public radio show called People with Things to Say. And the guest on both of them was the same person, Marilyn Croker. Marilyn Croker is the lady who writes the names of drugs. She's the one who put the all in Adderall. And I just love that one. So there's and she points out that a lot of drugs sound like cheeses. Harvoni, Havarti, which is it? So we play a game on that called Drugs or Cheese. And so there are things like that I think will get people to laugh. And there are things that I hope that will get them to think. And if they don't like part of it, skip past.
But they'll eventually find something they like.
Oh, hell yeah.
I that's such a great attitude. If you don't like it, keep going. You'll find what you like there eventually. That's awesome. This was extremely fun, and I really want to do it again. So we have to do it again. And also, we should meet up and get coffee.
Looking forward to it. Thommy, great to see you. You're a good egg.
Thank you. You too, Josh.